Hey everybody, this is Cromar with TGN, and I'm here today to bring you another Rift video. This is the top 10 newbie questions, or top 10 questions for players who are just getting into the game and are curious about how some things work. Some of these questions are things I see asked constantly. Other ones, not asked as much, but they're still valid questions that people are concerned about. These questions are mostly aimed at new players, but it's also useful for some people who are just trying to decide if they want to buy the game or not, because they want to know how certain mechanics stack up. Now, there's many more questions out there to cover. This is just the first 10 that came to mind that needed to be covered. Also, I'm not talking about builds here. Builds is specific builds for each class is a much more complicated topic than I wanted to get in here. It would have to be like a top 100 questions to cover that, so that's going to be for separate videos. So let's get started. Number 10. How do I change my souls? I'm going to address this first because it's an easy one. In the starting area, you gain 3 of the 8 normal souls for your class just from doing quests, and you can learn the other 5 souls at level 13. When you hit that level, just go to the quest givers you'll find scattered around your capital city, or if you're a guardian mage, you want to go to Quicksilver College, and accept the quest. Now, every single quest is the same, so you'll be repeating the same quest 5 times. Simply go seal a rift, click the quest item as instructed, and kill a mob, and that's it. Then you go turn it in and pick up the next one. In addition to the 8 normal souls, there's a special PvP soul for each class that you can purchase from a PvP vendor in your capital city, and that only costs 2,500 favor. Number 9. What's Soul Vitality? Soul Vitality is just another way to do durability. Every time you either die or resurrect at a graveyard, you take a hit on Soul Vitality. After you reach 0%, your next death and all subsequent deaths give you a Resurrection Sickness debuff that drastically lowers your stats. Fortunately, this debuff only lasts 5 minutes, so really, if you were poor and patient, you could just stay at 0% forever. You can actually cleanse the debuff and soul repair anytime you want by going to a healer or medic NPC, which can be found in most towns and even small outposts. Number 8. When and where do you get mounts? Now, if you played the early beta, you had to wait to level 20 to get a mount, like WoW, but they actually changed that for release. There is no level requirement for the 60% mount, so as soon as you have the money, you can get it. And you just go up to the mount vendor for your faction and pay the 2 plat or however much it is that it costs. It's not much at all. The Meridian's mount vendor is just inside the main gate to the right, while Sanctum's mount vendor is way in the northeast corner. It's a little harder to find. Now, each faction has an additional mount vendor with different options outside the capital. For Defiance, just run north on the road from Meridian, or for Guardians, run south on the road from Argent Glade, and you'll bump into the vendor along the road. At level 40, you get access to the 90% mount, which costs somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 plat, although I think it got cheaper. But I'm not positive, but you'll see it. If you just check the vendor, you'll see it. And then at level 50, you get the luxury 110% model, but that's over 100 plat. So you have to decide if you really want to spend that much money on it. It's a lot of money. Number 7, weapon speeds. Weapon speeds are totally normalized in Rift, unlike WoW, which is only partially normalized. In other words, weapon speed in Rift is absolutely irrelevant. Same goes for weapon type. So yes, backstabbing with a mace is equally effective as a dagger. Just use whatever has the most DPS and the most appropriate stats, which leads us to our next question. Number 6, what stat should I get? Now, this is not an in-depth technical answer, just a very basic newbie guideline, and I'll be doing much more in-depth stat analysis in the future, believe me. But for now, here's the basic chart. Each class has a primary and secondary stat. Warriors use strength and dexterity, rogues use dexterity and strength, clerics use wisdom and intelligence, mages use intelligence and wisdom. This goes for all DPS and healing specs, and yes, this includes the bard. No, intellect and wisdom do not affect bard healing. You have to get strength and dexterity for that. Tanks need to focus more on health, block, and avoidance, but the non-tanky stats are the same. In addition to those base stats, all classes need to meet a certain hit, focus, or toughness requirement for rating, but I'll get to that later. Number 5, which crafting professions make what, and where do I get the materials? So, rune crafting, I want to take that one first, because it makes runes, which are just enchants from WoW, and it's unique in that it does not have a dedicated gathering skill. You just rune break anything that you find, like any greens, to get your materials, kind of like enchanting. And of course, the enchants, if you're not familiar with that, they just give a permanent buffs to your gear. You can sell those runes on the auction house, and they sell very well. Now, the rest of them are a little more complex and interconnected. The gathering skills are mining, which gives you ore and gems, foraging, which gives you lumber and herbs, and butchering, which gives you leather and special animal trophies, such as teeth. Cloth drops automatically from all humanoid mobs, just like WoW. Armorsmithing makes chain and plate armor. Weaponsmithing makes all weapons except staves and wands. Artificer makes rings, amulets, wands, staves, and offhand items, which are called totems. All three of those are fed materials primarily by mining, which makes mining a very in-demand profession. But weaponsmithing and artificer use a frustrating amount of lumber from foraging, which is also very expensive. So that makes both of those very expensive professions to fund. Armorsmithing also uses leather and cloth, but both of those are quite cheap, and a little bit of lumber for shields, but not much. Apothecary uses herbs from foraging and animal trophies from butchery. The last one is Outfitter, which is the cheapest of all professions, and then it only uses leather and cloth, both of which are extremely cheap. This means you can make and sell armor to rogues and mages for next to nothing. Number 4. How does PvP rank work, and how do I check it? PvP rank is only attainable at 50, so if you're below 50 and you're trying to figure it out, that's the problem. Checking it's easy once you hit 50, but most people still miss it and ask this question all the time, so I wanted to just cover it real quick. Just open the Warfront menu, the default button's K, and click the PvP tab at the bottom. Yep, it's that simple. So to gain rank, just grind level 50 Warfronts, just like grinding Favor, and you gain prestige points, and you just basically wait for the progress bar to fill up, and you get a ding. So, just another form of leveling. Unlocking higher ranks gives you access to higher-end talents in your PvP soul, such as the Infiltrator soul for rogues, and higher-end gear from the vendors. And that's the entirety of the PvP endgame. Number 3, I never read the quests. What's the story? So I'll give you a fairly short version here. Talara, which is the big rock you're standing on, was created by the gods, collectively called the Vigil. The natural Talaran races, humans, dwarves, and elves, all worshipped the Vigil. Outside of Talara, the 6 planes, fire, water, air, earth, life, and death, are all trying to invade Talara and either remake it in their image or destroy it, depending on which one. At the same time, they're fighting each other for the right to kill all of us horribly. Fortunately, Talara is protected by the Ward, which the Vigil built to protect us about 1,000 years or so ago, after the last time they invaded, which was called the Bloodstorm, if you've seen that reference somewhere. Well, if you play through the Guardian starting zone, you see the events that caused the Ward to be destroyed by the Tyrant King of Mythosia. I'll cover that in more detail in my lore series. Now that the Ward's down, the planes start invading all over the place. Now, if you play the Defiant starting zone, you see one possible future where the Death Plane kills everyone. If you play the Fall of Lantern Hook dungeon, you see another alternate future where the Fire Plane kills everyone. Basically, if we don't stop it, one of the planes is going to kill us, and so that's the stakes for the player. Now, as for what's the difference between the factions, the Guardians are the people who remained devout to the Vigil, because remember, everyone used to worship the Vigil. And the Defiant are made up of a human and elf faction, the Eth and the Kalari, that turned away from it in the past. In addition, the last race, the Bami, are actually immigrants from the Plane of Air, who are trapped here because of the Ward. Remember, it protects us from traveling between the planes? Well, it also trapped the Bami here, but they're peaceful. Now, the Ward has been destroyed, so they could actually return to their planes, but because they've been here so long, and because they've got strong allies, they've decided to stay and help defend Talara. So the Bami kind of act as a way to show us that not everyone from the planes is evil. Now, there's a lot more detail to this, of course, and I'll be hitting all those points in my ongoing lore series. Number 2, what is there to do at level 50? Endgame content is all PvE. For PvP, there's just the Warfronts and grinding prestige like I was talking about earlier, and that's it. For PvE, though, there's expert dungeons, raids, and special rifts, expert and raid rifts. In between those, there's a ton of daily quests to rep grind for all variety of rewards. For some gear, crafting recipes, cosmetic stuff, pets, mounts, so far and so forth, all kinds of stuff. Plus, you can do your daily crafting quest. You get 1 crafting quest per profession. So if you have 3 crafting professions, you get 3 daily quests. And you get marks to buy more recipes. And you get the chance to get plaques, which you buy epic recipes, but it's very low chance, and it's very random. Now, you can also simply go and seal normal rifts all over Stillmore and Shimmersand for planar rewards, money, and so on. So there's plenty to do. Even if you can't find a group for a dungeon, you can always go, there's lots of stuff you can do to go solo. Number 1, what is the endgame PvE progression structure? Now, this is a really big one, and I thought about doing a whole video on this, but I realized when I was writing it out, it was only going to be like 4 minutes, so I decided to condense it a bit and just fit it into this video. So, endgame PvE, first it starts with the normal dungeons, Abyssal Precipice and Charmer's Caldera, but you don't need to spend much time here. Just do the quest once, do the dungeon once to get the weapon rewards to get started. Maybe you get a couple missed drops while you're there, and that's good too. But you don't need that much gear to move up to the first tier expert, so don't spend too much time here. Tier 1 experts are the Fall of Lantern Hook, Foul Cascade, King's Breach, Iron Tombs, and Realm of the Fae. Now, these dungeons have no special requirements for DPS or healing. As a matter of fact, a fresh 50 healer in level up greens can easily heal this. For tanks, though, you do need a 50 toughness, which is the anti-crit stat, which is trivial to get. These experts drop mostly blues, but occasionally low-end epics. At the end of the dungeon, you get a malformed soul, which is used to make lures to open expert rifts. You simply buy the husk from the Rift faction merchants in your capital city and combine it with 5 malformed souls. These are not soulbound and can be bought at the auction house. Once the lure is complete, go to any minor tear in the correct zone for your lure. It will tell you on the tooltip, and it will open the rift. It requires 5 people minimum, but since it is outdoors, you can actually bring as many people as you want, and you only need 1 person to bring a lure, by the way. So you basically have 1 person volunteer to shoulder the cost of that. Unfortunately, the loot from expert rifts is very limited. You generally only get 1 item, but you do get a lot of rep, or notoriety as they call it in this game, and it's fun. Tier 2 expert dungeons are Charmer's Caldera, Abyssal Precipice, Dark Reading Deeps, Deep Strike Mines, and Runic Descent. Now these dungeons do have a gear requirement for DPS. You need 100 hit or focus. Hit is for physical, warriors and rogues, and focus is for clerics and mages. Now healers can run this with very basic level 50 gear. Just the junk you got from the tier 1s and some crafted stuff. You don't need that much. But the dungeons actually are pretty hard, and they include a lot of skill and DPS checks. So try to run it with people you know, especially DPS that you know, because you can... one bad DPS will ruin the run. Tier 2s drop better blues than Tier 1s, and a more frequent epic drops, and the epics are higher quality also. At the end of the dungeon, you get a Corrupted Soul, which is just an epic version of Malformed Souls. You need 10 Corrupted Souls and a Husk to open a Raid Rift. Raid Rifts are just harder versions of Expert Rifts that require a minimum of 10 people, but again, you can bring whoever you want. The rewards are also much better. And by the way, when you make your lure for the raid rifts, you have to actually find a raid tear to make to create the rift. Now, once you've sufficiently geared up from all of this, you're ready to embark on the real raids. Now, currently, the only active raid at the moment is Greenscale's Blight, but they're adding more constantly. DPS need 200 hit or focus, and the tank needs 150 toughness. Now, going over the top on toughness is actually helpful because you can cause crits to actually do less damage than normal hits. So that's just a quick tip for tanks. And your healers will appreciate that. And speaking of healers, it's far more demanding than the tier 2s on the healing. Far, far more demanding. So make sure you are seriously decked out from experts. So that's it for the top 10 list for now. Now, I'm sure there's plenty more questions out there, so please ask me if you have any questions of this nature, newbie questions or more advanced questions or whatever, and I'll be happy to help you out as much as I can. Just contact me by email, cromar@tgn.tv, or send a PM to TGN Rift, or just post on the video, and hopefully I'll be able to get to you or someone else will, and we'll try to figure out what we can do to help you out. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. This is Cromar.